November 19th, 2005, item number 105. Today's guests are Sam and Steve from the SG Show.
Podcast411.com. Listen different.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Rob, and this is the Podcast 411 podcast. Before we get into the interview with Sam and Steve, a couple quick news and notes. First, anytime during today's show you want to leave some feedback, our call-in number is 206-666-HELP. That's 206-666-4357. And if you're listening to us on a portable MP3 device with a screen, you can just look down at the name and you'll see it scrolling and the phone number will be there as it scrolls through. I actually just updated the ID3 tag tutorial to talk about that a little bit. With iTunes, you have to be careful because iTunes replaces your name when someone subscribes to you through iTunes. So again, go to the new ID3 tag tutorial. I talk a little bit about that. But if you have a call-in number, I do highly suggest that you put it in the name of your ID3 tag and that you also put it in the title of your item in your RSS feed. So that way when iTunes goes and bullies and corrupts your entire ID3 tags when someone subscribes through iTunes, your phone number will still make it over into the name field. If you remember a couple months back, I interviewed Steve Ely from Escape Pod, and at that time, we talked about me doing a story for Escape Pod. Well, that story is up. It's episode number 28. It's called Your Corporate Network and the Forces of Darkness, and it's a collaborative effort with me and Mur. And collaborative, I mean Mur came in at the last minute and saved my butt because there's 7 voices I needed to do. 2 of them are female. And I cannot do a female voice to save my life. I tried and tried. Matter of fact, been working on this story for 2 months, and I have not been able to nail a female voice. And Mur came in a matter of minutes, banged out those parts. And Mur, thank you so much for saving me on that. But it's a really good story. I had fun doing it. You get to hear me do 5 different voices. Check it out, Escape Pod, episode number 28. I'd also like to mention the Podcaster Con that's going to be at the University of North Carolina. We talked about this way back when. Now that the expo's over, it's time to talk about it again. It's Saturday, January 7th. It is a non-profit, non-commercial podcasting convention with a lot of interaction between all the people that show up. This is not an expo. This is a con, and there is not going to be anybody there distributing or selling their wares. There is no expo floor or anything like that. This is purely from a non-profit point of view. There'll be a link in the show notes. Matter of fact, I'll have a link on the front page for Podcaster Con. If you are interested in meeting some other podcasters, getting together and talking about podcasting in a real environment that's going to allow the flow of information between podcasters, this is the one to go to. And last note, I just found out that on the November 20th issue of Parade magazine, which you'll find in your local Sunday newspaper, there is an article on podcasting. So if you get your newspaper, make sure you thumb through and see what the article looks like. I have not seen it yet. Hopefully it's a good article and it does podcasting well. Well, since it's Saturday, we're going to go ahead and play a tech tip from Michael. Here we go.
This is Michael Carino from DigitalMediaCastExperiment.com with another Podcast 411 tech tip. How many of you ruined your photo stylist playing your Beatles and Led Zeppelin albums backwards, trying to hear messages from Paul McCartney or the devil? Anyone? Well, maybe I should ask, how many of you knew there were phonograph records before these newfangled CD things came out? Oh, come on, I can't be that old. Well, I was one of those. But now in this new age of digital media, you can not only play stuff backwards, but you can also make backward audio to play in your podcasts. It's actually quite easy. Find a segment of audio and then apply the reverse audio function to it. If you don't think your audio editing software can do this, grab yourself a copy of Audacity at audacity.sourceforge.net, record a sound, select a section, and then choose Effect and then Reverse. It's that easy.
Tip tech that for thanks always as Mike. Mike as always, thanks for that tech tip. We're going to go ahead now and get into the interview with Sam and Steve. This is a father-son podcast or as you'll learn listening to the interview, really a son-father podcast. Sam is 7 years old, and this is a great podcast. If you have kids and you want them to have something to listen to that you can enjoy with them, please check out this podcast. We're going to go ahead now and get right into the interview with Sam and Steve. Here we go. Sam and Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're really happy to be here.
And I always start out with the same first question, and that is, what was your first computer? And I'll put it out to both of you.
What was yours, Dad?
Well, the first computer I ever used was in the computer lab in high school, and that was a TRS-80. Then I used an Atari 800, and that's what I learned to program on. The first computer I ever owned was a Mac 512.
I think that the first computer I ever did something on was a microscope.
Well, that's a first answer for me on that one. What was the first podcast you both listened to?
Mine was Radio Memories.
That's the one where they have all those old-time radio shows. I guess the first podcast I listened to was Jim Kloss's Rant with Whole Wheat Radio. We came to Whole Wheat Radio via a trip that we took up to Alaska and discovered this singer-songwriter named Larry Zarella, who's played on Whole Wheat Radio. And so we found Jim's podcast, and that was the first one I started listening to.
Jim's was one of the first day I listened to podcasts. It was like the fourth one I listened to. So yeah, I noticed on your site you had that listed as your inspiration was Whole Wheat Radio.
I still listen to his rants, and I can't believe that a guy can talk for an hour at a time and be entertaining and poignant and insightful all at the same time, and never boring.
Him and Esther do a very good job. What podcasts are you listening to now, Sam? Is there any that you like in particular?
I like P. Fletchy.
Now, you did a tribute show where you filled in for Scott Fletcher.
Yes, I did fill in for P. Fletchy.
P. Fletchy. How did that come about? Whose idea was that?
At first it was my dad's and Scott's, because Scott has a new baby and she has some kind of virus, so she
has
cries.
colic.
Yeah.
And so my dad thought it would be cool if I filled in for Scott, and Scott said it was okay, so I did it for him.
You did a great job, by the way.
Thanks.
Sam loves listening to Scott Fletcher, and I think sometimes he wishes his dad had a voice like...
Yes, I do.
Well, that's like Scott's voice is in podcasting what Michael Jordan's basketball skills are in basketball.
I think Sam sometimes wishes his dad had Michael Jordan's basketball skills.
Sam, do you want to explain your podcast and what people are going to hear if they listen?
We talk about my dad's birthday. We talk about Halloween.
In some of your past shows,
Yes.
You've had some different questions on there.
Yes.
Such as, like, who is the first man to hit a golf ball on the moon?
Yeah.
And things like that. Where do you come up with the ideas for the questions?
Well, we just think about things that we want to know, and then we look at the things up and see what happens.
What was the most surprising answer that you've had for a question?
I was most surprised with the answer that air had weight. In our earlier shows, we talked about things for families to do, and we talked about some books and, well, a lot of things that kids do.
On one of your shows, Sam, it mentioned that you go to school year-round.
Yes.
What kind of school is it that you're going to? Where is it? Public or private school?
It is a public school.
Yeah, it really makes for an interesting work schedule to correspond to the school schedule. But so the theory's a good one. It's that if kids don't have too much time off in the summer, then teachers don't have to review for so long at the beginning of the year, because kids don't have as much time to forget everything that they learned during the year. But it means that they only have about a month off during the summertime. Right around the end of September, they have another 3-week break.
Yeah, we have 3 weeks breaks during the spring, fall, and the winter.
Sam, what are some of the things that you would like to talk about on upcoming shows, or some ideas you have for some upcoming shows?
I'd like to talk about and call a teacher and see why kids get so much homework.
That's
Do you think you get too much homework, Sam?
Yes.
That's gone from being sort of an idea to a theme in our shows, and I think it's evolving into a cause for Sam.
You made me talk about it during that Sam Fletcher when I did the show for P. Fletcher.
Sam, is there anything that you want to talk about in the interview?
No, but I just have a question for you.
Okay.
I have a question for you. Why do you have a pickle with some gray wire things for some motto?
Okay, it's actually a pea pod, and he's holding
what?
a pea pod. It's a green pea pod,
Yeah.
and he's holding a fly cast, a fishing rod. So what it is this a pod who's casting. So podcast.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's like a visual puzzle.
So it's just the visual representation of the word podcast.
Whatever.
Sam, can you tell everybody where to locate your podcast?
sgshow.blogspot.com.
And you were giving your dad grief about the call-in number.
Oh, he gave me grief. I'm not the one who keeps on forgetting the number.
So what's your call-in number?
206 337 2677.
206-33 Sam 77.
That's right.
Hey, that's what I said.
It's nice we got one that's so
26.
memorable, isn't it?
I remembered it.
You're crazy, Dad.
We get calls from all over the place. It's
You're
terrific
right.
that some people are getting it, but fortunately they're not getting it from
Us.
me.
What's been some of your favorite feedback that you've received on the show?
I guess I can think of two. One we received just recently from a little girl who heard one of Sam's book reviews, and she went ahead and read the book.
And
you remember the name of the book?
Midnight for Charlie Bone, and she did a whole book report on it.
So that was cool. And it's nice we're kind of getting a new audience of podcast listeners that we didn't really know was out there, which kind of the youth set, the under 12 set is our demographic.
What do you mean? So I come in a package and you have to buy me because it's a set?
It's not that kind of set.
Sam, what do your friends think about you doing a podcast?
Most of my friends at school don't know I do a podcast.
Does your teacher know you're doing a podcast?
No. But I think that different friends that don't go to my school with me, I think they like it because they like being mentioned on the show. You know what I mean?
Yep. Steve, you mentioned in one of the shows your setup, and you were saying that you use Adobe Audition to do your editing. Can you go over just your whole setup again?
I think the most important piece of the setup now is the headset mic for Sam. As you can expect, a 7-year-old moves around quite a bit during the course of a recording. So Sam's got his own headset mic, which is plugged now into a solid-state recorder. We experimented with a whole bunch of other setups before using mixers and plugging them directly into desktops and laptops, but now we use a Marantz PMD670.
And we plug that into the computer.
Plug that into the computer after we're done. And then I am using an Electro Voice, which I splurged on for my voice. So that's that's what gives me the best possible vocal quality without being Scott Fletcher.
You're nowhere near P. Fletcher.
Okay.
Oh, that's brutal.
Never will be.
Oh.
That's harsh. Let's all right. Let's have you hit up Scott for your allowance next week.
By the way, you owe me my allowance.
Yeah. So anyway, so we record into a solid state recorder and then plug it into my laptop and edit it in Adobe Audition and SoundForge. 8 or 10 hours later, once I figured out all the technical issues, we get it posted up on the website.
And what are you trying for a typical length of your shows?
We are looking for around 20 minutes. Somewhere along the way, somebody in a podcast said, the 20 minutes is the optimal length, so you can listen to 3 on some sort of mythical or fictional or imagined commute into work, like everybody has exactly a 60-minute commute into work. But we shoot for around 20 minutes. It seems to be a comfortable length for people to sit through.
Just do me a favor, Rob, and keep that the thing where keep that on the show. Don't edit it out where I insulted my father.
For you, Sam, I'll keep it in.
Oh, great. 8 years, Rob. This is what you have to look forward to. Prepare yourself now.
What are you doing as far as trying to promote your show to let people know that the show is out there?
So we decided we'd do 1 month of shameless self-promotion of getting votes up on Podcast Alley, and that resulted in a grand total of 40 votes. That was enough to propel us to the number 2 position in the education category, which, I don't know, are we educational?
You ask questions and you give answers.
Yeah, we give educational quiz questions.
Yeah, I think last month we were right between the Photoshop guy and the learn Russian at your own pace show. And then there's us. But it's actually been word of mouth. We just got email this week from somebody who heard about us from somebody else in Canada. So the word of mouth is kind of interesting. We've noticed a lot of people are listening to us, not subscribing, but going to the site and downloading the shows so that maybe they can't quite get the whole subscription thing yet or don't understand how they can get podcasts in iTunes. So we're trying to help make it easier for them to get all of our shows by subscribing.
Is there anything about the show that you want to talk about, Steve, that we didn't cover yet?
Well, one of the things that we're trying to do in the future is to promote music for kids. It doesn't have to be kids' music specifically.
Who said that?
What?
Who said that?
Me. Didn't you just hear me just now?
I know, but I didn't agree on that.
Oh.
I'm not working on that.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
Well, we know who rules the roost there.
I'm just trying to project like a couple years in the future with like a Martin and Lewis kind of a breakup where he goes off to work for Disney and I'm stuck trying to get my phone calls returned by his. Yes.
I'm never going to go work for Disney.
Yeah. I may send you off to work for Disney.
You wish.
One of the things that we'd like, or I would like to see is more music on the show. And so we've tried to solicit some... I've tried to solicit some music from musicians, artists that are targeting their songs to kids, and we'd love to play more music on the show.
Well, any musicians out there, contact Steve at the SG Show. And do you want to give an email address so that they can send you that if they have some music they would like to contribute?
SteveandSam@gmail.com.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. I always like to end the interview with the same question, and that is, what advice would you like to offer to those looking at doing a podcast?
Always, before you do a podcast, see on what you're recording, see if it works. So make sure, talk into it before you start recording to make sure that it will work.
Is that because sometimes your dad has gone through a show and not actually recorded it?
Well, he did once, but it came out the worst show in history.
Yeah, especially if your engineer is Steve. Make sure you test him before you do it.
And Steve, do you have any advice to someone who's looking at starting a podcast, especially someone who's looking at doing a podcast with their child like you are?
Well, we've had a number of emails. We've had a couple just recently from parents who are looking at doing podcasts with their kids. I guess my advice would be just go ahead and do it. It's a lot of fun. Have an idea what you're going to talk about beforehand, because it's a little bit challenging just to wing it without at least some sort of notes as to what you're going to talk about. But go ahead and do it. It's a lot of fun, and occasionally those nuggets come out that are preserved forever that I'll definitely be using to embarrass him later on when he's grown up.
You won't be able to embarrass me because I'm embarrassing you.
Oh, but someday, Sam, you'll have a girlfriend, and you'll bring her to the house, And your dad will pull out the tape of you when you were 7 years old.
Yeah, just wait till your wedding.
Oh,
We gave out the phone number. We love kids to call in, and we always play their clips on the show. So if they want to be on a podcast, and
especially kids.
yeah, especially kids, if they want to be on a podcast and don't want to have to deal with the hassle of starting one on their own, we invite them onto ours. And so all they have to do is call our voice comment line, and they'll get on the SG show.
Well, Sam and Steve, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Welcome.
Thanks. It was fun.
Well, folks, that concludes our interview with Sam and Steve from the SG Show. Sam and Steve, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really had a great time interviewing you, talking with you. For everyone out there, I highly, highly recommend you check out the SG Show at sgshow.blogspot.com. Of course, there'll be links in the show notes. Coming up at the end of today's show, we're going to be playing a promo from the View from the Pew podcast, so stick around for that. As always, audio feedback is always welcome at either 206-666-4357, that's 206-666-HELP, or you can send audio feedback to podcast411@gmail.com. And please don't forget, Mer and I are still looking for any feedback you'd like to have in the book that we're working on. If you have any tricks or tips that you'd like included in our book, let us know. Give your mom something to talk about. Well, that's going to go ahead and do it for us today. As always, I'm your host, Rob, from Podcast 411, reminding you to listen different.
Are you ready to rock?
View from the Pew Radio is on the air. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the View from the Pew radio broadcast, coming to you each and every week for 1/2 hour, featuring some of the best in Christian independent music, with some inspiration thrown in to help get you through your week. Stop by our website at pewpod.blogspot.com or check us out in iTunes. Make sure you subscribe. You won't want to miss a single episode of this.
It's this amazing!
Are you going to ask us some questions or what?
Have you have you ever interviewed a 7-year-old before?
No, I have not.
I wish you great luck.
Whatever. There was one time that you had to edit yourself when I didn't even have to get edited once.
Well, that's true. I have to edit myself quite heavily.
Womp womp.